Hey guys, enjoy these new 20 stories. We hope you enjoy them. Let us know your thoughts. And as always, most of you listening aren't subscribed, so please smash that subscribe button and hit that like button too. It's free and does so much for us. We're forever grateful. Now to the stories.
I used to think I was pretty good at telling when someone was being real with me. Like, you spend enough time in support groups, therapy rooms, message boards, you start to pick up on the tiny cues, the way people type when they mean it, the hesitations when they talk, the weird things they don't say. So when Emily showed up in the group, quiet but always thoughtful, I didn't question it. She introduced herself like the rest of us, said she'd been through some stuff, and never really made it about her. Just asked questions, listened a lot, commented under my posts with these soft, empathetic little notes that felt honest. I don't know, she made it easier to talk. We started messaging outside the group, just on the side. Nothing deep at first. I posted about a memory that hit me hard, and she reached out to say it was brave. From there, it turned into these long, weirdly comforting messages about life, pain, trying to get through the day. She wasn't the kind of person who tried to fix you. She just got it. Like when I told her about the first time I realized I was in survival mode and how I didn't even remember who I used to be before it all, she sent this one message that still sticks in my head. You're still in there, just quiet now. It made me cry. Not in a bad way, just in that kind of cracked open way. I started telling her things I hadn't even said in group, which is saying something because that space was already raw. She told me little bits about her life too. Said she lived in a small apartment in Toronto, liked early morning walks, didn't sleep well. Said she drank too much coffee and was trying to write but couldn't focus. It all felt low stakes, normal. She had this way of being there without being too much. Some nights, when things were bad, I'd just message her a period and she'd know. She'd stay up with me, send voice notes, links to dumb memes or poetry, random articles about space or deep sea creatures. I started looking forward to those little interactions. Like, it was someone who didn't owe me anything and still showed up. This went on for months. Real ones. Like, I think I met her around early spring and we were still talking into winter. It got to the point where I'd feel weird if I didn't check in with her at least once every couple of days. She'd ask how I was doing before anyone else, even people I'd known for years. I told her things I hadn't told anyone. Some of them were pretty heavy. Stuff from when I was younger, stuff I still didn't know how to process. I'd type out these long walls of text and she'd just sit with them. Never rushed me. Sometimes just left a heart. Sometimes wrote back paragraphs. It felt like a journal that loved me back. I don't know how to explain what it felt like when I found out. It was by accident. Totally random. I was scrolling on my phone in bed, couldn't sleep, and this article popped up on my feed. Some feature piece about trauma narratives in the modern age or whatever. I clicked it because the headline was weirdly close to something Emily and I had talked about, like eerily close. And the second paragraph hit me like a truck. There was this line. This specific line I had written in a message to her months back, almost word for word. I knew because I'd saved that message. I had screenshotted it. It was mine. I sat up and reread the whole thing. The article wasn't by Emily, it was by someone named Matt. A man. And it wasn't just that one quote. The entire article was built around stories that were familiar. My story. And pieces of other people's stories too, probably. Things I'd seen shared in the group. Reworded just enough to sound different. But not different enough, I knew. I just knew. I tried to make it make sense in my head. Maybe she was working with him. Maybe she'd gotten permission. But the more I dug, the clearer it got. Emily didn't exist. She was Matt. There was no woman in a Toronto apartment. No coffee addiction. No insomnia. Just a guy collecting pain like it was content. Turning people's lowest moments into sentences he could polish and publish and profit from. It felt like getting the wind knocked out of me. I kept refreshing his profile, reading everything he posted, and there it was again and again. Little echoes of me of things I'd only said in private. Things that weren't stories to me, they were my life. The worst parts of it. The parts I gave him because I thought he was safe. I deleted everything. Every message, every screenshot, every note she'd sent. It didn't help. I still remembered it all. I felt stupid, like I handed someone the keys to the parts of me I kept locked up, and they just waltzed in, looked around, and took sonars. The group was torn when I told them. Some people believed me right away. Others weren't sure. I get it. It's a hard thing to wrap your head around, that someone would fake being a trauma survivor just to get material. But the article didn't lie. It was all right there in black and white. I wasn't even angry, not at first. Just hollow, like I'd been scooped out. I don't really talk in the group anymore. I log in sometimes, scroll through the threads, but I don't post. I guess I'm scared it'll happen again. That I'll trust someone who turns out to be a story thief in disguise. And the worst part is I miss her, or the version of her I thought was real. I miss the comfort, the check-ins, the weird little links at 2 a.m. I think that's what gets me the most. It wasn't just that he used my story. It's that he made me feel safe while doing it. Either way, it's a hard no for me on the house-sitting date plan. Next time someone asks me to hang out at a place that doesn't belong to them, I'm Googling the lease first. There was this stretch of time where everything felt like it was finally lining up. Not in some dramatic movie kind of way, just calm. Like I could breathe without second-guessing every inhale. That's when Liam happened. I met him on one of those dating apps I kept deleting and re-downloading like it was part of my personality. You know the kind. Swipe, ghost, delete, repeat. I wasn't looking for anything serious, but he wasn't like the rest. His messages were actually thought out, not just what's up. At 1 a.m. he asked real questions, sent playlists instead of selfies, and didn't talk about meeting up right away. It was weirdly refreshing. He told me he was a freelance writer and that he liked to travel, which sounded pretentious when other guys said it, but somehow didn't with him. He said he'd been through a rough breakup too, and we ended up bonding over those late-night convos that go way too deep, way too fast. We had this whole thing going where we'd send each other little audio clips before bed. Just voices talking about nothing, like a long-distance podcast only two people would ever hear. It made me feel like someone out there actually wanted to know what my day was like. After a couple of weeks, we started video chatting. He was cute in that kind of real way, tired eyes, messy hair, never trying too hard. We had inside jokes, a shared Google Doc full of movie quotes and dumb hypotheticals, and this habit of sending each other pictures of whatever we were eating just to complain about how boring it was. It felt like we were slowly building something that actually mattered. I told my friends about him. He sent me a playlist called For Mornings When You Miss Me, and I listened to it even when I didn't. It wasn't long before we started talking about the future. Not in a creepy, let's get married way, but in a what would it be like to live in the same city way. He said he was considering moving for work anyway, maybe somewhere closer. We had lists of places we wanted to go together, coffee shops, weird museums, hiking spots. It didn't feel like a fantasy. It felt like a plan, like something real adults do when they're tired of starting over. Then he said he had something kind of exciting but weird to tell me. He'd been working on a big piece about online dating culture, and his editor loved it. Said it might get picked up by a major outlet. I was happy for him. Genuinely, it sounded cool. He was vague about the details, but said he'd been interviewing people, reading forums, collecting stories from different angles. I asked if I'd read it when it was out, and he said, "You'll definitely know it when you see it." That should have been a clue, I guess. But when you trust someone, your brain fills in the blanks with the best case scenario. The article dropped out a week later. I was on a train when I saw it linked on a site I follow. The headline hit me first. Inside the Illusion, what online love really looks like. I clicked it before I even connected the dots. I thought maybe he'd quoted something I said in passing, maybe mentioned me in some lighthearted way. But no, this wasn't a quote. This was our story. Except it wasn't just ours. It was mine. My messages, my photos, my jokes, my routines. Stuff I told him when I couldn't sleep. Stuff I thought was safe. He had rearranged it, changed my name, sure, but not enough to make it unrecognizable. He called me a case study, like I was some weird lab rat he'd been observing for fun. He even included screenshots, cropped and edited, but mine. I sat there on that train, phone in my hand, and it was like my brain refused to believe it. I scrolled back up, reread the intro, scrolled down again. It was all there. The playlists, the dumb Google Doc, the audio clips, the late-night talks, framed like he was some kind of undercover explorer exposing the loneliness of modern dating. He wrote like he was distant from it all, like he hadn't been right there inside it with me. I couldn't move. I missed my stop, just sat there while people got on and off around me. I kept refreshing the page, hoping maybe it would disappear, or maybe I had misunderstood it all. But no, he used me. used what I gave him, not just the facts, my trust, the soft parts, the things I thought were just between us. I messaged him, not even angry, just kind of frozen, just sent why. He didn't reply. Then I noticed he blocked me on everything, like straight up vanished. Deleted chats, gone profiles, no trace. Just the article, just the words he wrote using mine. The worst part was seeing the comments, people praising how raw and authentic it was, talking about how brave he was to dive so deep into this world, saying things like, "This really captures what it's like to try and love in this generation." I wanted to scream. I wanted to reply to every single person and say, "He didn't capture it, he stole it." But no one would care. I wasn't even mentioned by name. I was just one of the stories. I didn't tell my friends for a while. I felt stupid. Not because I've been fooled. I mean, maybe a little bit more because I let myself feel real things for someone who never saw me as anything more than a feature in his work. It made me second guess everything. Every message I ever sent to anyone. Every time I opened up, every detail I thought was small but ended up as a headline. Eventually, I emailed the publication. They gave me the usual response, said the names were changed, that it was within journalistic boundaries, that the writer followed their ethical guidelines, whatever that means. There's no guideline for having your life turned into clickbait by someone you cared about. I still see the article sometimes. It pops up in my feed when someone reposts it, thinking it's some genius piece of social commentary. I blocked it everywhere, but it finds its way back, like a ghost of something I thought was real. I don't date anymore. Not online. Not seriously. I still talk to people sure of Rakita Chalos. Safe. Nobody gets playlists. Nobody gets late night audio clips. I deleted that Google Doc. Threw out the playlists. I even tried writing about it once, like maybe I could take the story back. But I couldn't. Every sentence felt like I was copying him. Like it wasn't mine anymore. I don't know if he ever thinks about me. Maybe I'm just another name in a folder on his laptop. Another story in his research. All I know is, I thought I was building something with someone who saw me. But he was just building content. It started with a meme, something dumb and relatable about divorce that made me laugh harder than it should have. I was still deep in the mess back then. Paperwork half done, my stuff in boxes and silence in a house that used to feel full. I didn't post much, just lurked, but I commented on that one. And that's when Chloe popped up. She replied with something even funnier and weirdly specific like she knew. We started going back and forth in the replies, then ended up following each other. That was the beginning. She wasn't like the other online people who get you with toxic positivity or spiritual quotes pasted over sunsets. Chloe was messy, real. She posted about missing her ex while also hating his guts, crying while folding laundry, eating cereal for dinner and feeling like that meant she failed at adulthood. She didn't sugarcoat it, and I like that. It made me feel less alone. I started posting more and she always replied, not just with a like or a heart, but with long, thoughtful comments that made it clear she actually read what I wrote. We'd end up messaging after that, and those messages turned into voice notes, and the voice notes turned into hours-long phone calls. It was wild how fast it escalated, but I think that's what happens when you're both wrecked and lonely and trying to find meaning in the middle of emotional rubble. She told me she'd been through a nasty divorce too, worse than mine, even. Said her ex tried to take everything and left her with nothing but debt and an apartment with a mold problem. We trauma bonded, I guess, if you want to call it that. Swapped horror stories, compared notes, made each other laugh in between venting. She was the first person I told when my ex tried to fight me for the cat. She was the one who cheered me on when I went to therapy for the first time. She asked good questions, not just surface stuff like, "How are you holding up?" but weird ones like, "What was your first happy memory after you left?" Or, "What song did you stop listening to because it reminded you of them?" It felt like she cared about the answers. I sent her long voice memos about things I hadn't told anyone else, even my closest friends. Things like how I sometimes hoped I'd wake up in a different life, how I still smelled his shampoo in the closet, how guilty I felt for wanting him gone even though I missed him. She always had the perfect response. Never preachy, never fake. Just right. And that's what kept me coming back. She made the hurt feel lighter, like she was holding some of it with me. At one point, I told her I felt like she knew me better than anyone. I meant it. Then came the blog. Someone from work sent me the link, said it was inspiring and I should read it. The title is some poetic nonsense I don't even remember now, something like Breaking in Order to Bloom. I clicked it, thinking it'd be a cliche post with flower metaphors and quotes about self-love. But the first line, it was mine, word for word. A sentence I'd said in one of those long voice memos to Chloe. Something I only told her. At first I thought maybe it was coincidence. People say similar things all the time, right? But then came another line, then another. A whole paragraph lifted straight from a story I told her about the night I sat in my car for 2 hours because I couldn't bring myself to walk into my empty apartment. It kept going. Not just my words, but my life. Stuff only she knew. Slightly edited, but not enough. She gave me a fake name, sure, and changed a few details. My cat was a dog now, my city was swapped for another. But everything else? It was mine. I froze. Scrolled all the way to the bottom. The author's name hit me in the face. Chloe. Not a pen name. Her actual name. She didn't even try to hide it. There was a whole bio section, links to more blog posts, and even a tab labeled Divorce Diaries with an archive of posts that, it turned out, weren't just about me. She had written about other people too. I recognized some of their stories from our group chats. Stories I assumed were shared in confidence. And there they were, out in the open, rebranded as her wisdom. When I messaged her, it wasn't angry. I was more confused than anything. Just said, "Hey, what is this?" Sent the link. She replied almost immediately, like she was waiting for it. Told me it was for a healing project and that she never meant to hurt anyone. Said I should feel honored that my story resonated so deeply that it deserved to be shared. That's the word she used, honored, like it was a compliment to have my private pain repackaged for her content. I didn't even know how to respond. I just stared at the screen. All the closeness we had, all the vulnerability. It wasn't a friendship, it was material. I was a character. A plot line. A catchy anecdote to stick between ads for self-care brands and inspirational quotes. After that, I blocked her, deleted our messages, left the groups we were in. I didn't want to deal with the explanations, the questions. I didn't want to hear people say, well, at least she changed your name, or maybe it helped someone else. I didn't care. It wasn't hers to share. That's what people don't get. It's not about whether it helped anyone. It's about the fact that I trusted her, and she used that trust like it was free content. The blog's still up. I checked once, even though I promised myself I wouldn't. She's got a whole brand now. Instagram, a podcast, interviews where she talks about the brave women who trusted her with their truths. I guess that's me. One of the brave ones. Except I didn't sign up for that. Now, whenever someone tells me they're a writer or that they run a blog, I freeze up a little. Not even on purpose. It just happens. I think about all the things I said into a voice memo thinking someone cared, and how now it's sitting out there on the internet like a display piece in a gallery I never agreed to. I haven't shared anything personal online since, not because I'm scared, but because I'm tired. Tired of wondering who's listening for the right reasons and who's just waiting to write it down. I met Ethan during a weird, in-between part of my life. The kind of phase where you don't know what you're doing, but you keep pretending like you do. I had just moved back in with my mom after dropping out of school twice. I was working a part-time job as a depressing stationery store where I'd spend most of the day restocking overpriced notebooks and trying to avoid small talk with customers. I was tired all the time and couldn't figure out why. I wasn't sad exactly, but I wasn't okay either. Somewhere in the middle, stuck in neutral. I found this mental health subreddit one night when I couldn't sleep. It wasn't one of the super intense ones where people trauma dump in every post. It was quieter, more thoughtful. People posted about trying to get out of bed or how to make friends again after burning every bridge. That kind of stuff. That's where Ethan showed up. He commented on one of my posts about losing motivation, and it wasn't just the usual hang in there response. He actually asked questions, not in a creepy way, just curious, like he was trying to get it, not fix it. We ended up talking in the comments, then moved to Dion's. From there, it just kind of snowballed. He had this way of making things feel less heavy. He didn't try to turn everything into a life lesson. We mostly talked about music, stupid internet trends, food we wish we could afford. But sometimes we'd slip into the heavier stuff. Panic attacks, meds that made things worse before they got better, the kind of loneliness that follows you even when you're in a room full of people. He told me he'd been dealing with depression since high school. Said therapy helped, but only once he found the right person. He shared stuff that made me feel less broken. Like how he used to disappear for weeks and no one noticed, or how he canceled plans just to sit in the dark and listen to the same album on repeat. I related to all of it. We got each other, and that was rare for me. Then he invited me to this Discord group. Said it was small, private, low pressure, just a handful of people who were all dealing with similar stuff. I wasn't sure at first. I've been in those kinds of groups before, and they usually go sideways fast. But I joined anyway. And honestly, it was good. Better than I expected. There were about 15 of us, and it felt like this weird little digital campfire. Everyone was kind of broken in their own way, but no one made a big deal out of it. We talked late into the night sometimes, sharing stories and joking around, or just sitting in the voice chat doing nothing together. It felt safe. It felt real. Ethan was a glue. He welcomed new people, started most of the conversations, posted dumb memes to cheer everyone up when things got dark. He never made it about him, but we all trusted him. Like, if someone was spiraling, he was the one they messaged. He just had that vibe. You could tell he'd been there too. One night, I told the group about something I'd never said out loud before. Not you to my therapist. It was a memory I didn't like touching. Something small but sharp from when I was a kid. I expected silence, or maybe someone changing the subject. But they didn't. People responded. Kind of quietly, but with warmth. Ethan messaged me after, just to say he was proud of me for talking about it. I didn't cry, but I came close. That's the thing. It wasn't just a group. It became a support system. We leaned on each other. We celebrated the small wins like getting out of bed or going to the store. We vented when our brains turned against us. We even did movie nights sometimes, just sensing up a timestamp and pressing play at the same time. I hadn't felt that connected to people in years. So when it all blew up, it didn't feel like betrayal. It felt like grief. I found out by accident. Someone from the group, Tessa, sent me a screenshot one afternoon. She was freaking out. It was from this writing blog, one I'd never heard of. Some anonymous writer had been posting excerpts from a novel they were working on, and one of the chapters was practically a carbon copy of something I had shared in the Discord. Not just the vibe, but the actual story. The details were slightly tweaked, different names, slightly different setting, but the bones were mine. It was unmistakable. We all started digging, comparing notes. Turns out it wasn't just me, it was everyone. Pieces of conversations, entire monologues, even some of our jokes had made their way into this novel in progress. The voice was eerily familiar, too familiar. Someone checked the domain info for the blog, and after a little poking around, it all pointed back to Ethan. He didn't deny it when we confronted him, just kind of vanished. Deleted his account, shut down the server, poof, gone. I don't think I even processed it properly at first. I sat there staring at the screen, reading one of the chapters over and over. It was written beautifully, which made it worse. He had taken our pain, our mess, our most fragile moments, and polished them. Turned them into something marketable, something he could pitch to a publisher. He didn't even twist it into fiction. He just stole it, lightly edited, and called it art. It made everything feel fake. Every conversation, every compliment, every late-night talk. Like he was sitting there with a notepad the whole time, writing us down. I started questioning if anything he said about himself was real. Maybe he was never depressed. Maybe he never cared. Maybe we were just characters to him. Background noise for his story. The group fell apart after that. Some of us tried to stay in touch, but it wasn't the same. The trust was gone. We built something fragile together, and he shattered it without even blinking. I think that's what haunts me most. Not just that he stole our words, but that he never even said sorry. He just disappeared like none of it mattered. Now when someone tells me they write, I freeze a little. Not out of fear exactly, but because I remember what it felt like to be written. To have my worst moments repackaged as plot points. To be someone else's inspiration without ever agreeing to it. I still journal sometimes. Still talk to a few people from that group in DMs, but I don't share the real stuff anymore. Not like I used to. Those pieces of me, they're mine now. They stay with me, where they belong. There's this kind of thrill you get when someone genuinely likes your art. Not the casual, cool drawing comment from some rando online, but the kind that feels like they actually see it. That's what Maya gave me. She didn't just like my stuff, she cared about it. Or at least she made it seem that way. It wasn't like she found me through a big account or anything. Just a random repost of a sketch I did, buried under a bunch of tags. She messaged me the same night, said she'd been following Loki for a while and finally had to reach out. I was used to getting random DMs here and there, but hers stood out. She actually referenced specific pieces from months back, like ones I'd forgotten about. Said they felt intimate, like still frames from someone's memory. That stuck with me. No one had ever described my stuff like that before. I checked her profile and it looked legit. She had maybe a couple thousand followers, mostly art-related content, some gallery pics, some behind-the-scenes stuff. Said she worked in the art scene in New York, helped with curating shows, and connecting young artists with opportunities. We started talking more. She wasn't pushy, which I liked, just super supportive. She'd comment on new stuff, send me articles about upcoming exhibits or interviews with artists she thought I'd vibe with. A few weeks in, she said she wanted to commission a piece, something personal. Told me about this dream she had, all floaty and strange, with red thread and birds and broken glass. I was into it. Weird dream imagery is my thing. I sent her a few early sketches and she freaked out in a good way. Said it was exactly what she saw in her head. Paid me right away too. More than I usually ask for. Said my work was worth more and that I needed to stop underselling myself. She ordered 2 more pieces after that. Each one came with some dreamy little backstory, always a little abstract but interesting. I didn't ask too many questions. I was just happy to be creating again, and it felt good to have someone rooting for me. I started telling friends about her. Told them maybe, finally, someone actually saw potential in what I did. That maybe this was the start of something bigger. Then came the invite. She said there was a group show opening at a gallery she helped organize. She wasn't in charge, just involved behind the scenes. Sent me the flyer, said she was going to be in town and I should come through. It was a little out of the way for me, but I figured what the hell. I needed to get out of the house anyway. She said she'd love to introduce me to a few people and maybe even talk about featuring me in something down the line. I showed up about halfway through the event. Place was packed. The kind of crowd that looks like they all know each other but pretend they don't. Everyone holding wine like they were born doing it. I felt underdressed and weird, but I figured it didn't matter. I was there for the art. I looked around, half hoping to spot Maya. Couldn't find her, so I just wandered. And that's when I saw it. One of my pieces. Hanging on the wall, framed, spotlit, except it didn't have my name under it. It had hers. At first, I thought maybe it was a mix-up. Like, maybe the name tag fell or someone put the wrong label on it. But then I noticed the next one. And the one after that, 3 of them. All mine. All credited to Maya. I just stood there for a minute, thinking maybe I was losing it. I walked up close to the first one, tried to find anything that would explain what I was seeing. There was a little description plaque next to it. A whole paragraph about the meaning behind the work, how the artist had created it after a personal loss. The story was totally made up. Nothing to do with me or why I made it. It read like some art school assignment pretending to be deep. I backed away, pulled out my phone, and started scrolling through our messages. The commissions were there, the payments, the voice notes where she told me she loved the sketches. It was all there. Proof that I made the work, that it was mine. I texted her. No reply. Tried calling, straight to voicemail. I stayed for another 10 minutes just floating around trying to figure out what the hell to do. I thought about yelling, about going up to someone causing a scene. But the truth is, I froze. I didn't know how to explain what happened without sounding unhinged. And she wasn't even there, or if she was, she wasn't showing her face. I left before the end. Took the long way home just walking and scrolling and rereading everything she'd ever said to me. It was all fake. Every compliment, every "you're so talented," every message that made me feel seen. She built this perfect little con out of kindness. Made me think I mattered, all just a seal. A few days later, she blocked me. Account gone. Website down. Nothing, like she vanished into thin air. I tried messaging the gallery, sent them a long email explaining everything, even attached screenshots. They replied once, some short message saying they'd look into it, and that the artist listed had signed all the necessary paperwork. That was it. No follow-up. No apology. I found out later she'd been doing this for a while. Stealing work from small artists, commissioning stuff under the radar, then presenting it as her own in pop-up exhibits and gallery spaces where no one asked too many questions. always with just enough polish to make it seem legit. A different name in each city, different social accounts, different stories. She made a name off of what I made, probably sold a few pieces too. I'll never know. The gallery never answered my follow-up emails. I tried getting legal advice, but it went nowhere. Too expensive, too complicated. All I had was screenshots and a bunch of art that I couldn't even post anymore without people thinking I was the one copying her. I still draw, but I don't share it much anymore. Not like I used to. I make stuff, and it just sits on my hard drive, untouched. Sometimes I think about deleting it all. Other times I think about putting it out under a fake name, just to see how it feels, just to take something back. I don't know where she is now. Probably working her next angle, complimenting someone into handing over their life's work. And maybe that's the worst part, knowing I was just one nail along the line. Just another name she used to get what she wanted. Just another artist no one believed until it was too late. There was this time in my life when everything felt like noise. Social media, news cycles, group chats I didn't want to be in, just constant static. I remember thinking I needed to do something that mattered, something louder than all of that. That's when I started getting involved in activism. Not the kind with press conferences and fancy nonprofits, just online organizing, small campaigns, info threads, digital posters. It was messy, but it felt real, like shouting into the void with other people instead of alone. That's how I met Noah. He commented on a post I made about digital surveillance, something about how encryption wasn't just for criminals. His reply was sharp and well-informed, but not in that annoying I read one article and now I'm an expert way. It came off like someone who'd been around. He followed up with a message, then another, and before I knew it, we were deep into these long, late-night conversations about strategy, burnout, and how hard it was to care about everything at once. He seemed to know his stuff, always had the best sources, knew how to cut through misinformation, and was one of the few people I met online who could actually organize people without being a total control freak. We ended up co-running this small Telegram group where we shared tools, planned online campaigns, and traded stories about protests we'd been to. I hadn't even met him in person, but I trusted him more than most people in my actual life. He had that steady presence, the kind of calm that made you feel like you weren't completely wasting your time. He said he was based in the Midwest. Said he got into activism after seeing how this community was left behind during the last election cycle. We joke about the weirdest places we'd gotten into political debates. Mine was a dentist's office. His was apparently a funeral, and we built up this rhythm. He was the one who reminded me to take breaks, to log off and touch grass, even when he clearly never did it himself. He made the work feel lighter. Things got serious fast. One campaign we helped coordinate actually got picked up by some mid-tier news outlets. Not huge, but big enough that trolls started swarming our inboxes and forums got flooded. Noah was solid through all of it. Knew how to lock things down, how to handle harassment, how to keep people from panicking. He never tried to lead in a flashy way. He just made things work. Everyone respected him. After that, our group grew. More people joined, the projects got bigger, and suddenly I was getting interview requests and weirdly formal emails from organizations I'd never heard of. I stayed low-key, mostly because I didn't want my name out there, but no, he handled outreach. He said he didn't mind taking the heat, said he was used to being in the background. That was his thing, staying off the radar, being the guy behind the curtain. It wasn't until one of our smaller side chats went completely dark that I noticed something was weird. We had this encrypted thread for planning an upcoming event, just 5 of us. The kind of stuff that wasn't illegal, but close enough that you wouldn't want screenshots floating around. Nothing wild, just disruptive protest stuff. Non-violent, but bold. One day, someone in the group freaked out, said their friend had gotten a visit from federal agents. Not arrested or anything, but questioned. Out of nowhere, about stuff that wasn't public. We all went silent. Deleted the thread, moved platforms, standard protocol. I didn't think much of it until another person in a different chat mentioned something strange. How they'd shared a tactic in private and then saw it quoted, nearly word for word, in a training manual from a government agency. It wasn't online anywhere, just in that thread. That's when the pattern started to show. People began realizing that things they'd only ever said in private, stuff about planning, connections, even personal details, were showing up in places they shouldn't. A few of us dug through old logs, compared notes, tried to trace who had access to what. Every thread led back to one person. No. At first, we thought maybe his account got hacked, or maybe he slipped up somehow and was being watched. We wanted to believe that, but then someone looked into his old usernames, found inconsistencies, photos that didn't line up, mentions of him in places that made no sense, old forum posts under different names, all with the same tone, same phrasing, like someone trying too hard to sound like they belonged. It unraveled fast after that. We found a leaked document online, some random archive of surveillance tactics being discussed in law enforcement circles. And there he was, not by name, but by role. An embedded digital liaison. His quotes, his tactics, his words, the ones he used with us, copied straight into a briefing document for training field agents. I felt like my stomach dropped through the floor. Everything we'd built, every late-night conversation, every strategy session, it was all compromised. We'd been working side by side with someone who wasn't just lying about who he was, but actively collecting information, watching us, recording us. He didn't just use us. He used our trust, our friendship, our belief that we were all in this together. And the worst part, we'd shared more than ideas. We talked about our fears, our burnout, our families. I told him about my mom, how I stopped talking to my dad after he told me I was wasting my life. I told him about the night I almost gave it all up, how organizing was the only thing that made me feel like I was doing something that mattered. And he listened. He asked questions, made me feel understood, like I wasn't just shouting into the void anymore. He knew everything, and he took it all. After we exposed him, or tried to, he vanished. Accounts deleted. Groups locked down. Messages gone. It was like he'd never been there. No trace. No answers. Just silence. The community fell apart after that. Some people went totally offline. Others turned on each other, paranoid that there were more like him. I don't blame them. When someone wears your trust like a costume, it's hard to believe in anyone again. I still think about him sometimes, not with anger, which surprised me, just this weird emptiness, like I lost something I didn't even know could be taken. He made me believe in what we were doing. He made me feel like it mattered. And then he took that feeling and buried it. Now, whenever I meet someone new in activist spaces, I wait. I listen for the slips, the too perfect phrasing, the questions that go a little too deep too fast. I hate that. I hate that he made me suspicious, that he turned connection into a threat. But more than that, I hate that I let him in, that I handed him my trust and said, "Here, hold this." And he did, just long enough to use it, then let it drop. It started with a book club. Not even one of those deep literary ones, just a casual online group that picked mostly contemporary fiction. Stuff you could read after work without wanting to tear your brain out. I joined it during one of those weeks where everything felt kind of slow and stretched thin. I figured reading with strangers might be a decent way to stop doom scrolling or staring at the wall like I was waiting for it to blink first. That's where Isla came in. She wasn't the organizer or anything, just a regular member like the rest of us. But she was the kind of person who made things feel more fun without trying too hard. Always had a good take on the book, posted random memes in between chapters, asked interesting questions that got people actually talking. You know how most online groups start strong and then die out. Ours stuck around, mostly because of her. We ended up doing more than just book discussions. It turned into this little community. We shared playlists, talked about dumb things our coworkers did, even had a group video call once to play a trivia game. Isla had this way of making people feel like they mattered. She always responded, always remembered little details. Like if you mentioned your dog was sick where your grandma was visiting, she'd follow up the next week and ask how things went. Stuff like that. One time, I was having a rough night. Nothing dramatic, just that slow, creeping sadness that sometimes shows up for no reason. I dropped a vague message in the group chat about feeling off, and Isla DM'd me right away. Said she was around if I needed to talk. We messaged for hours. I told her about my divorce, which I hadn't really talked about much outside of therapy. Not because I was embarrassed, just because it felt like this weird, heavy thing that people didn't want to hear about unless they were getting paid. She didn't judge. Said she'd been through something similar, though less messy. Said she got it. We didn't talk every day after that, but I felt like I had someone who really saw me. Someone who didn't expect me to be okay all the time. We shared music, inside jokes, numb voice notes. I looked forward to her messages. Over time, a bunch of us started treating Isla like the glue of the group. She was the one who kept things light when people argued about book rankings. She came up with themes for our monthly reads. When someone's job got cut and they couldn't afford a book, she just sent it to them without making a big deal out of it. She was that person, the one who felt like the internet version of a hug. One day, someone in the group messaged me a link. Said, "Hey, does this sound familiar?" It was a podcast. I hadn't heard of it, but apparently it had started picking up steam on some platforms. I clicked the link and listened to the intro. The voice was familiar. Took me a second, but I realized it was Isla. Except she wasn't using that name. She had some artsy pseudonym with a vague, poetic title. I figured maybe she had just started a creative project and forgot to mention it. Cool, right? Then I kept listening. The episode was about healing through online communities. It started off innocently enough. She talked about loneliness, about finding connection in unexpected places. But then she started sharing stories, specific ones. At first I felt general, like maybe they were inspired by real chats, but then I heard something that made my stomach knot. She talked about a friend she met through a book club, someone going through a divorce. She recited a message I'd sent her nearly word for word, a message I hadn't shared with anyone else. A message I wrote at 2 a.m. while sitting in my car outside the grocery store because I couldn't bring myself to go home. I paused the episode. Sat there with my mouth half open, like if I didn't breathe it wouldn't be true. Then I played it again and again. Same line, same rhythm, just slightly reworded. My story. Coming out of her mouth. A podcast. For strangers. I started shaking. Not from anger at first, just confusion. I thought maybe I was being dramatic. Maybe she'd asked for permission and I forgot. I checked her messages. Scrolled back months. Nothing. No mention of podcast. No request to use my story. Just her asking questions. Saying thank you. Saying she understood. I messaged her. Didn't accuse her, just asked what the podcast was about. She replied like it was no big deal. Said it was a creative project inspired by collective healing. I asked why she didn't ask me first. She said she changed all the names and details and that I should be flattered to be included in something so meaningful. That word. Flattered. Like she was doing me a favor by narrating my worst moments into a podcast episode sandwiched between 2 ads for meal kits. I didn't respond. I left the group chat that night. Some people noticed. A few messaged to ask what happened, but I didn't explain. I didn't want to make it a thing. I just didn't feel like showing up in a space where my pain might be tomorrow's episode. I started wondering who else she'd done it to. Who else had spilled something raw thinking they were being heard, not harvested. A couple weeks later, another episode came out. Different story. Different friend. Same vibe. I recognized pieces again. Bits of other people's lives. A woman who talked about her miscarriage. A guy who opened up about losing his job and not telling his family. All presented like Isla had lived it herself. Like it was asterisk her asterisk heartbreak. Her pain. Her growth. She was getting popular. People online called her brave. Said her voice was soothing. Said they felt seen. I wanted to scream. I wanted to comment, to post screenshots, to rip the curtain down. But I didn't. I didn't want my name dragged into it. I didn't want pity or drama or explanations. I just wanted her gone. I still had some of her voice notes. Download jokes. Old playlists she made for me. It's weird how fast someone can go from being your safe place to being the reason you don't trust anyone. I haven't joined another online group since. I read alone now, quietly. No comment sections. No messages. I keep thinking about that night in the car, about how small I felt, and how to her it was just content. Something to edit and wrap in background music and send out into the world like a gift. Like it didn't belong to someone. Like it wasn't real. I don't really remember when I started calling myself a photographer. I just know that it happens somewhere between spending way too much time walking around abandoned buildings and getting way too excited about golden hour. I wasn't doing it for money or clout. I just liked the quiet of it, looking at things like they meant more than they did. It gave me a way to be in the world without having to talk much. I started sharing some of my shots online, mostly on forums and low-key pages. Not Instagram or anything big. Just places where other people who liked cracked concrete and weird reflections would actually care. That's where I met Jack. He was already kind of known in one of the groups I posted in. Not famous or anything, just someone whose feedback people listened to. He commented on one of my photo sets, said something about liking my framing, and then messaged me directly. At first, we just talked gear. What camera I used, what lenses he preferred, how much editing was too much. It was easy conversation. He was funny and actually paid attention. Then he said he was coming to my city for a weekend and asked if I wanted to meet up and shoot together. I said sure. We met up early on a Sunday. One of those gray days that doesn't really have a time of day, just clouds. We shot around the industrial district. Rusted fences, loading docks, big empty warehouses with graffiti tags so layered you couldn't read anything. It was a good vibe. We didn't talk much, just pointed out stuff to each other and moved on. He had a nicer camera than me, but he didn't act like he was better. He even complimented a few of my shots, said he liked how I noticed stuff he missed. After that, we kept in touch. Sent each other photos, traded editing tips, talked about maybe doing a little photo series together. Nothing serious, just something to motivate each other. He asked me to send in some of my RAW files so he could play with color grading. I sent a few. He sent a few back. We went back and forth like that for a while. Then he kind of disappeared. Stopped messaging as much. I figured life got busy or whatever. Happens all the time. I didn't think about it too hard. I kept shooting, kept editing, kept doing my own thing. About 2 months later, I was in this local bookstore. They sell zines and art mags in the back corner, most of them made by small collectives or schools. I was flipping through one of them when I froze. Right there on the page was a photo I had taken. A shot from behind an old diner with a flickering red sign, a puddle reflecting it perfectly. It was my shot. My angle, my timing, even the cigarette butt floating in the water. I would know that photo anywhere. Underneath it was Jack's name. At first, I thought maybe we'd both shot the same spot. But then the next page had another one. Mine again. An alley with broken windows and this weird green light bouncing off a dumpster. Then another. My photos. All of them. 4 shots, full spread, credited entirely to him. I felt my face go hot. My hands were shaking a little, which sounds dramatic, but it really hit me like that. He had taken the files I'd sent him and submitted them as his own. No mention of me anywhere. Just a little blurb about how he was exploring forgotten corners of the urban landscape and trying to tell stories through decay. I bought the magazine, went home, and sat on my floor flipping through it over and over. I pulled up the originals on my laptop, just to be absolutely sure. The framing was exact. Even the editing was mine. He didn't even try to change them up. I messaged him. No small talk. Just said something like, "Why are my photos in this magazine under your name?" He read it and didn't respond for a few hours. When he finally did, it was some weak excuse. He said he thought we were collaborating, and that I didn't care about publishing stuff anyway. Then he said he could credit me retroactively if it really mattered that much. That sentence made me want to throw my phone. Retroactively. Like giving me my own work back was some kind of favor. I didn't reply. I didn't see the point. He'd already made his choice. I unfollowed him on everything, left the forums we were both in, and deleted every message thread we had. I felt gross even reading them. What stung the most wasn't just that he stole the photos. It was how easy it was for him to take something I put time and heart into and pass it off like it was his. No hesitation. No shame. Just a smooth caption and a fake smile in the bio picture. I stopped shooting for a while after that. I'd still carry my camera sometimes, but I didn't feel excited about it. I'd see a cool reflection or a busted up wall with a weird shadow, and then I'd think, what's the point? Why bother when someone can just take it and slap their name on it? It took a long time to get that feeling out of my head. I started going out again, but I stopped sharing. I made a folder on my hard drive that just says mine. That's where everything goes now. No hashtags, no posts, no edits for someone else's approval. Every once in a while I still check that magazine. Jack's name is still on those pages. He probably got some followers out of it. Maybe even more work. I don't know. I don't care anymore. but I still remember every photo in that spread. I remember where I was standing, what it smelled like, what song I had in my headphones when I took the shot. I know they're mine, even if no one else does. And that's enough. For now. It started with sleepless nights and 2 a.m. feeding schedules, the kind of exhaustion that makes your eyes sting and your brain forget basic words like spoon or jacket. I was deep in the thick of early motherhood, and I didn't really know how to talk about it out loud. Everyone around me acted like parenting was supposed to be this magical, glowing thing, but I felt like I was unraveling a little more every day. So I turned to forums. Not the big flashy ones, but the smaller parenting communities where it felt like people were actually being real. No filters, no stage nurseries. Just raw, messy, tired humans trying to figure it out. That's where I met Olivia. She replied to one of my long rambling posts about my baby refusing to nap unless I held her the entire time. Most people had given generic advice or suggested swaddling techniques I'd already tried 10 times over. But Olivia didn't do that. She just said she'd been there, that it sucked, and that I was doing okay. Something about the way she said it landed with me. It didn't feel like advice. It felt like someone pulling up a chair and just sitting next to me in the mess. We started messaging privately. Nothing major at first. Just quick check-ins and shared complaints about how hard it was to shower when your kids screamed every time you put them down. Over time, our messages turned into voice notes, sometimes 10 minutes long. She told me about her divorce, how she felt like she was rebuilding her entire life from scratch. I told her about my own relationship slipping into silence since the baby came. We traded stories like survival kits. She told me I made her laugh when no one else could. I told her she made me feel like I wasn't alone. Months went by like that. I'd see her username pop up and feel that little flicker of relief. Like, okay, today might be a dumpster fire, but at least I can send Olivia a rant about it. I trusted her. I told her things I hadn't even told my closest friends. She said she was working on a little writing project, something private just for herself. She liked turning our conversations into poetry or journaling prompts. I thought that was cool, creative, harmless. Then one day I was looking for a recipe online and accidentally clicked on this parenting blog that popped up. It was one of those overly cheerful ones, pastel colors and cursive headers and perfectly staged breakfast photos. I almost clicked out, but a headline caught my eye. How a Divorce Made Me a Better Mother. The title was almost identical to something Olivia had said to me in a voice note. Weird coincidence, I thought. I clicked on it. As I started reading, I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. The post wasn't just similar to something she said. It was what she said. Almost word for word, her story, our conversation. But there was no mention of a forum, no hint that it had ever been shared in a private message. It was written like it had happened to the blog author, like it was her story. I scrolled to the bottom of the page and stared at the name. Olivia. Same spelling, same voice, same everything. She had a full website, dozens of blog posts, all with these worn, relatable tones that I realized sounded exactly like our messages. I clicked through more and more, and my stomach dropped further each time. There were entire posts lifted from our private chats. Stories I had told her, struggles I had shared, my daughter's sleep problems, my fights with my partner, my anxiety over going back to work. All of it was there. Rewritten just enough to sound like it came from her life. But it didn't. It was mine. I felt sick, actually sick. Like I had to sit down on the floor because my legs didn't feel right. I kept refreshing the page, hoping it would disappear, like maybe I had imagined the whole thing. But it didn't go away. She had taken everything, dressed it up in gentle metaphors and heartfelt conclusions, and called it her own. I messaged her right away. No pleasantries. Just asked her what the hell I was reading. She replied after a few hours like it was nothing. Said I was overreacting. That she had mentioned months ago she was working on a writing project. That she thought I knew she was drawing inspiration from our talks. She even said I should be flattered that my life was interesting enough to turn into content. Flattered. I didn't even respond to that. What could I possibly say? She didn't just tell my stories. She sold them. Her blog had ads, affiliate links, brand sponsorships. She was making money off trauma I had trusted her with, and I never consented to any of it. I stopped going to the forum after that. I deleted our messages. I removed every post I ever made. It felt like walking back through a room and trying to erase your footprints. I still think about how easily it happened. How I let someone into the most fragile part of my life and didn't see what they were doing until it was too late. I don't share like that anymore. Not online. Not even in private groups. That trust just isn't there now. Every now and then, I wonder if she ever feels guilty. If she ever reads back those posts and remembers that they weren't hers to begin with. But I doubt it. People like that are good at justifying things to themselves. They wrap it in creativity or storytelling or community and pretend it's harmless. But it wasn't harmless. It changed me. Took something that was helping me survive and turned it into content for clicks. And that's not something I'll ever forget. There was this phase where I was applying for jobs like it was my full-time job. My real job had laid me off with barely a warning, just one of those due to restructuring emails that hits your inbox like a car crash. I went from waking up to a packed schedule to waking up and refreshing job boards in my pajamas. That's when Ben showed up. I got an email from someone claiming to be a recruiter from a major tech company. I won't name it, but it was one of the ones everyone recognizes instantly. The kind where you imagine nap pods and kombucha taps and free laptops. I thought it was a scam at first, like one of those obvious ones with terrible grammar and fake logos. But this looked legit. It had the right formatting, the right tone, and even a company signature. When I Googled the name, a LinkedIn profile came up that looked real. It had endorsements, connections, posts about hiring trends. Ben introduced himself as a senior recruiter and said he'd seen my resume through a niche job site I'd actually applied through. He said I seemed like a strong match for an upcoming role that hadn't been publicly listed yet. Said it was a product design position, fully remote. Great benefits, the works. I was skeptical, sure, but also desperate enough to entertain the possibility. We set up a phone call. He was smooth, not pushy, just friendly and professional. Asked about my portfolio, past roles, what kind of team I liked working with. All the usual stuff. He told me the interview process would be a bit non-traditional since the role was still in development, but that they were trying to move fast. It made sense. Startups always make up their own rules. Over the next couple of weeks, we went through what felt like a legit hiring process. He sent me a design task that was detailed and specific, but not outrageous. I worked on it for days, crafted the perfect mock-ups, wrote out rationale, even filmed a little walkthrough. He gave me feedback, said the hiring manager was impressed. That he scheduled what he said would be the final round of review, a more in-depth conversation and a verification step, where I'd provide some personal documents to finalize the internal candidate profile. It still didn't seem fishy. Not really. I'd been through other hiring processes where they asked for verification. Sometimes ID, sometimes a diploma, sometimes work history forms. I'd done this dance before. He asked for my resume again, my portfolio link, a scanned copy of my ID, and a couple of references. He'd also asked me to fill out a form with basic employment history and address verification. I sent it all. A week went by. I followed up and didn't hear anything. Another week. I figured maybe the position fell through. Startups do that too. They go silent when funding disappears or roles get merged into other teams. I was disappointed, but I moved on. I applied for other roles, kept my inbox open, kept the hustle going. Then a few strange things started happening. I got a notification from a job board saying my profile had been updated, but I hadn't logged in. I went to check it out, and someone had added an entirely new section to my resume. A fake role at a company I never worked for. It was weird, but I figured it might have been a glitch. I deleted it and changed my password. Then I got a rejection email for a role I never applied to. At first, I thought maybe they sent it to the wrong person. But when I contacted the company just to clarify, they said they had received an application from someone using my name, my resume, my work samples, but with a different email address. I asked them to send me a copy. When they did, my stomach dropped. It was my resume, my portfolio, even the same opening paragraph I always use in cover letters. But the email wasn't mine. It looked like a variation of my name, and the phone number wasn't mine either. It was close, but off by a digit. It didn't stop there. Over the next few days, I started getting alerts about accounts being accessed. My Dropbox, my design portfolio site, even an old Google Drive I hadn't touched in a while. I changed every password I could think of. Set up two-factor on everything. I tried messaging Ben. The emails bounced back. His LinkedIn profile was gone, like totally wiped. No account found. Even the posts he'd written were gone. I searched his name and company on Google again and came up with nothing. Not even the old search results I'd seen when I first checked. It was like he never existed. It hit me slowly at first, then all at once. He had been using me. Not just to get information, but to build some kind of fake persona. Someone out there had been applying for jobs under my name, using my real qualifications, but directing the responses to himself. Maybe to get a job he wasn't qualified for. Maybe to scam companies. I don't even know. I filed a police report. I contacted the companies involved and explained the situation. Most of them were understanding, but some weren't. One recruiter accused me of being dishonest, said it was unprofessional to apply under multiple names. I tried to explain it wasn't me, but once your name gets dragged into something, people don't always care about the details. I froze my credit. I flagged my ID as compromised. I spent days emailing companies asking if they had received suspicious applications with my name. I felt like I was trying to outrun my own shadow. Even now, I still wonder what he got out of it. Did he land a job pretending to be me? Was he collecting salaries under fake names? Did he sell my info to someone else? I'll probably never know. What I do know is that for a while, I stopped applying for jobs altogether. Every time I filled out an application, I felt like I was sending it into a trap. Like someone was watching me through the screen, waiting to grab another piece of my life and make it theirs. And it wasn't just about jobs. It was the idea that someone could slide into your life so easily, take your words, your work, your name, and use it like it belonged to them. And you wouldn't even know until it was already too late. I still hadn't fully come back from that. I'm more guarded now. I double-check everything. I Google every name. I ask questions even when I feel annoying doing it. Because now I know how easy it is for someone like Ben to walk into your inbox and walk away with your whole life. I'm not proud of how far I let it go, but at the time it felt real, like one of those rare, weird internet things where a good connection just lands in your lap, and you convince yourself that maybe, just maybe, this is what people mean when they say timing is everything. That's what I thought Kayla was. Good timing. We met in the comment section of a post about chronic illness. I wasn't even following the page that posted it. It just showed up in my feed because someone I barely knew liked it. She replied to something I wrote, something short, like, yeah, I feel this, and we ended up messaging later that day. At first, it was nothing major. She told me she had lupus. She said it casually, not looking for pity or attention, just like it was part of her daily routine. She made jokes about it, said she hated the hospital food, said her nurse played the same 20 songs on repeat while doing rounds. Her profile wasn't private, and I scrolled through a bunch of posts of her with a shaved head and a big cardigan wrapped around her. In bed, in hospital chairs, with IV poles next to her. There were captions like, "Not today, pain," and "One day at a time." I don't know. It felt genuine. She didn't look like she was trying too hard. And honestly, I liked that she didn't use filters and didn't post those fake deep quotes that people love to slap on top of a sunset. She felt like someone who had been through a lot and didn't need to scream about it. She said she wasn't really looking for a relationship, just people to talk to. I wasn't really looking either, so it felt easy. We started messaging more, long messages too. She told me about her flare-ups, the treatment cycles, the times she felt okay, and the weeks when her hands were too swollen to hold a fork. I started to care. That's what did me in, I think. I got emotionally locked in without realizing it. It didn't feel like the usual online thing. She was funny in this low-key, sarcastic way that made boring conversations better. She knew weird facts about marine life. She listened to the same trashy reality shows I did and said she watched them to feel better about her own mess. We never called. She said her voice was weak from meds. I didn't press. She sent photos sometimes, mostly blurry selfies with hospital gowns or her dog curled up next to her, or her window view that looked out over a parking lot. She always had an excuse for not calling. Too tired. Throat hurting. Migraine. I bought every one of them. After about 2 months, she said she was being moved to a hospital closer to me. Said she was getting into a clinical trial, and it was at this teaching hospital about 30 minutes from where I lived. I was already invested by then. I didn't even question it. She told me her new room number and said I could visit on Sunday afternoon, since that's when she felt best after treatment. I bought snacks, stuff she said she missed. Haribo gummies, a strawberry milkshake, socks with little turtles on them because she mentioned once that she loved sea turtles. I remember packing that bag and thinking, this is sweet. Not romantic, just sweet. Like something you do for a friend who's having a rough week. The hospital was massive. I'd never been there before. I parked in the visitor lot and followed the signs to the wing she said she was in. When I got to the reception desk, I gave her name. The nurse looked at the computer and asked me to repeat it. I did. She checked again. Said there was no one by that name in the entire hospital. I spelled it for her. She checked another system. Still nothing. I figured maybe I had the wrong building, so I tried calling her. Straight to voicemail. I messaged her. Nothing. I sat in the lobby for over an hour, checking my phone like a maniac. Eventually, I asked the front desk if someone with her first name had checked in recently, just in case she had used a different last name. Nothing. Nobody. I drove home in silence like my brain had hit a wall. It wasn't just disappointment. It was this weird, hollow confusion. I felt stupid for being there, like someone had handed me a fake map and watched me wander around looking for treasure that didn't exist. I messaged her again when I got home. Then the next day, no reply. The day after that, I went back to her profile. Gone. Just gone. Not deactivated. Deleted. Vanished like she'd never been there. Her comments on other posts. Wiped. Her messages to me. Still there, but now her name just showed as Instagram user, and her profile picture was that blank silhouette. I searched her photos in reversed image lookup. I had no clue what I was even expecting to find, but I needed to know. 3 of the photos came up. Not on her page, obviously, but from a support group forum for chronic illness. Different name, real stories. One was a woman who wrote about her treatment under her real name. The other photos were scattered on Pinterest under hospital aesthetic. That one messed me up the most. Whoever Kayla was, she'd pulled pieces from real people. She'd built herself like a college. And somehow I'd missed all the cracks. Or maybe I didn't miss them. Maybe I saw them and looked away because I wanted her to be real so bad. I never figured out who it was. No closure. Just the knowledge that I brought a milkshake to a person who didn't exist and sat in a hospital lobby holding a bag of candy for someone who was never going to show up. Now I second guess everything online. The tone of messages. The timing of replies. The photos. It's all too easy to fake, and I know that now. I can't unread her messages, though. Can't unfeel how I felt. I just carry that version of her around with me now, knowing she was built on borrowed pieces. The first time I saw Zane's profile, I assumed he was way out of my league. His photos looked like they belonged in a magazine. Moody lighting, sharp angles, black and white edits. There was one of him holding a vintage camera, leaning against a rusted fire escape, and I remember thinking no one casually takes a photo like that unless they know exactly what they're doing. He had that kind of look people pause scrolling for. His bio said he was a fashion photographer, part-time traveler, full-time observer of people and shadows. I didn't know what that meant, but it sounded cool in a try-hard way that I was kind of into. So I messaged him. I expected either no reply or a dry thanks, but he actually wrote back. Not just once, either. He started sending me messages that weren't like the usual dating app ones. They felt thoughtful. He talked about light and color, how most people don't notice the way rain reflects off glass at night. That kind of stuff. He told me he used to shoot runway shows in Paris before he got burned out and came back home to find the art again. I didn't question it. His whole profile was filled with these perfectly curated shots. Models, gritty alleyways, broken mirrors reflecting sunlight. His captions were vague and artsy, but I just figured that was his vibe. We'd moved from the app to texting, then Instagram DMs. He never called. Said he hated his voice in recordings. Fine, whatever. He didn't want to FaceTime either. Always some excuse. I'm editing. I'm shooting all day, or my internet's trash right now. I probably should have flagged that, but I was honestly caught up in it. The mystery worked on me. He sent me some photos that he said hadn't been posted yet. They were insane, like magazine level. One was this woman in a green dress standing in front of a subway train. Another was a guy with a tear running down his face, the lighting hitting it just right. I told him they looked professional, and he just replied, "Real stories deserve real light." When I asked where he shot them, he gave me vague answers like downtown or back alley near Fifth. Never specific. I told myself he was probably just private or protective of his work. Artists are like that, right? A few weeks later, he told me he had a gallery exhibit coming up. Said a friend was curating a show and wanted to include his stuff. It was happening 2 cities over in this artsy part of town that I actually knew pretty well. He said he was nervous about people seeing his work in person. That should have been another red flag. He claimed to have shot big gigs in Paris, but was nervous about a tiny local gallery. But again, I ignored it. I asked if I could come. He was weird about it at first, but eventually said, yeah, sure, why not? He gave me the time, date, and the name of the gallery. Set to look for the refractions exhibit. I showed up early. It was one of those small industrial spaces with exposed brick and string lights and wine in plastic cups. People were milling around, murmuring about composition and texture like they knew what they were talking about. I walked around until I found the section labeled refractions. I was excited, nervous. It felt like I was about to meet someone I'd known forever, but never seen in person. And then I saw the photos. They were the same ones he sent me. The subway one, the crying guy, even the black and white portrait of a woman with her eyes closed. Except the name listed under the artist wasn't Zane. It was someone else. A woman named Courtney something. I thought maybe it was a shared project, or maybe he used a pseudonym. I went to the front desk and asked about the photographer. They told me she was local and just graduated from an art school nearby, and all the photos in that section were hers. She wasn't there that night, but they showed me her portfolio book and social media. Same photos, same captions. I felt my stomach drop. I walked outside and messaged him, asking where he was. No response. I called, straight to voicemail. A few minutes later, he blocked me on everything. I went home and started searching. Reversed image search, social media digging, all of it. Turns out every photo he ever sent me, every single one, was from someone else's portfolio. Not just one artist either. He'd scraped pictures from different photographers around the world, filtered them the same way, and passed them off as his own. I still don't know who the real Zane was. I have no clue what he looked like or where he was from or what his voice even sounded like. He built a whole identity out of stolen work and pretentious quotes. And I bought it because he made it feel real. What messed me up the most wasn't even a lie. It was how much I wanted it to be true. I wanted him to be the guy who saw the world through a lens and captured it in a way that made people feel something. I wanted him to be the kind of person who found beauty in shadows and reflections. Instead, he was just someone watching from the sidelines, pretending to be part of something he had nothing to do with. After that, I couldn't scroll Instagram the same way. Every polished shot, every moody black and white image, I questioned all of it. I still do. I kept one of the photos he sent me, the one with the green dress in the subway. Not because of him, but because the photo itself is beautiful, and it deserves better than to be used like that. So do the people behind the lens. And I guess so do the people in front of it. I used to think accents were charming. That kind of pause before someone finds the right word, or the way they twist certain vowels. It always seemed kind of cool, like they had a whole other version of life tucked behind a different language. So when Marina messaged me and said she was still learning English, I was into it. She said she had moved from Italy a few months earlier and was trying to meet people in a new city. Her grammar was a bit off, but not in a Google Translate way. It felt natural, like someone still getting used to a second language. Her profile was simple, no filters, just soft lit selfies, a few pictures of her walking around the city, and one where she was holding a coffee cup with a messy bun and headphones on. She looked chill, like someone who read books in cafes and listened to lo-fi playlists while watching the rain. She didn't post captions much, just random emojis or little phrases like cozy day or a new home. I found it kind of refreshing. Not loud, not attention grabby. We started messaging. She said texting was easier than calling because she could read over my words slowly and translate if needed. Made sense. She always apologized if she took longer to respond, and I told her not to worry. Her messages were short but sweet. Things like "you are very kind" or "this made me smile." That kind of stuff. We talked about music, food, places she wanted to visit. She said she missed the sea. I asked where in Italy she grew up, and she said a small town near Naples, but didn't give the name. Said it was not famous. I didn't push it. She sent photos of the food she cooked. Pasta dishes with lots of basil and mozzarella, always in bowls that looked too perfect to be random. I noticed the photos had that Pinterest vibe, but I assumed she just had a good phone camera. Or maybe she liked plating her food nicely. I didn't overthink it. We talked for a few weeks before she brought up the idea of meeting. She said she was still shy speaking English in person, but she wanted to try. She suggested a park near downtown where she said she liked to walk in the mornings. She told me she'd bring pastries from an Italian bakery nearby, and that she'd be wearing a yellow scarf so I could find her easily. That morning I was actually excited. I hadn't been on a date in a while, and something about the whole thing felt different. Like it wasn't about games or proving anything. Just two people meeting up in real life after getting to know each other slowly. I got there a little early, walked around the park twice, sat on a bench near the main path. I waited and waited. The wind started picking up and my coffee got cold. I texted her. No reply. Then I tried calling, straight to voicemail. I waited another half hour. Still nothing. Eventually I left, figuring maybe she got nervous or lost or something happened. I wasn't mad, just confused. Later that night I messaged her again. Still no reply. The next day I checked her profile. Gone. At first I thought she'd blocked me, but when I searched for her from a different account, she was just not there. Deleted, like she'd evaporated from the app. All the photos, the messages, the whole profile wiped clean. That's when I started digging. I reverse image searched one of the food pics she'd sent me. It showed up immediately. Not just once, but dozens of times. It was a stock photo. So were the others. The same perfect bowls, the same marble counter, same lighting. The selfie with a coffee cup. Turned out it was from a travel influencer's page. Different name. Thousands of followers. Completely unrelated. I kept searching. The more I looked, the more I realized that literally nothing she'd shown me was hers. Every picture, every story about her morning walk or her quiet weekend was probably pulled from someone else's life. Whoever I'd been talking to had crafted this whole quiet, mysterious girl persona with stolen scraps from the internet. I tried to think back on everything she'd said. The way she avoided phone calls, the short texts, the vague details about her town. All of it added up once I stopped pretending it didn't. But here's the worst part. A few days later, I saw one of her photos again. This time on a completely different dating profile under a different name. Same yellow scarf. Same just moved from Italy story. I reported it immediately, but by the time I checked back later, that profile was already gone too. I guess what really messed me up was how calculated it felt. This wasn't someone who got overwhelmed and ghosted me. This was someone running a whole routine. Messaging people. Sending fake photos. Setting up meetings they never planned to show up for. I don't even know what the point was. It wasn't about scamming money. She never asked for anything. She just built a character and dropped it like nothing. I think about that walk in the park a lot. About how I sat there scanning faces, waiting for someone who didn't even exist. How I got dressed thinking I'd finally meet someone I clicked with. Someone who made awkward English sound poetic and liked the same weird music as me. But none of that was real. I was talking to smoke. I'm way more cautious now. I look up every photo, every name. I don't trust vague answers anymore. I don't trust too shy for calls. And I definitely don't trust people who seem too perfect and distant at the same time. I still walk through that park sometimes, not because I'm hoping she'll show up or anything dumb like that. It's just a nice park. But sometimes I sit on the same bench and think about how I thought I was about to meet someone honest, someone who just needed time and patience. Turns out I was just part of another story they made up and threw away. I don't usually go for the gym selfie types. You know ones. Guys who all kind of look the same, flexing in the mirror, protein shakes in the background, weird quotes in their bios like work hard, stay humble. But Darren's profile felt a little different. Yeah, he was hot, like ridiculously hot, but his photos weren't all polished. One was him with a turtle. Another was him lying on the floor surrounded by cereal boxes. It was weird and kind of funny. I figured if a guy that good looking could also be that random, he might actually be cool. His bio said he was a freelance model, mostly working in streetwear, and based a few cities away, but always traveling for work. He said he was just looking for chill people to talk to while he was in town. He didn't name drop brands or act like he was better than anyone, which I liked. He messaged me first, and even though I assumed he probably had a ton of people in his inbox, he actually kept a real conversation going. We talked about stuff like travel, how annoying airport food is, weird modeling gigs he'd done, and once we even got into a conversation about cereal mascots, which ended in him ranking them by how trustworthy they looked. He wasn't super smooth or trying too hard. He replied late sometimes, saying he was on a plane or stuck on a set. Honestly, it made him seem more believable, like he actually had a real life outside of apps. He sent me photos sometimes, nothing crazy. A shot from a hotel balcony, a blurry selfie in a mirror, a pic of some jacket he said he just modeled in. Everything seemed low-key. His Instagram had some of the same photos, but not too many followers, which I found kind of surprising for someone that attractive. He said he kept it private because he didn't care about social media. That actually made me trust him more. Stupid, I know. After about a week of messaging, he said he'd be in my area for a short job and asked if I wanted to meet up. I said yeah. He told me he'd be at this cafe downtown near a studio he claimed to be working in. I didn't think twice about it. He gave me the time, said he'd be in a gray hoodie and joggers, and mentioned he only had an hour or so between things. I got there early because I was nervous. I picked a seat near the window so I could watch people walk in. I kept checking my phone, refreshing the app, watching for a text or update. Nothing. 10 minutes passed, then 20, then 40. I texted him asking if he was close. No answer. I waited a full hour, just sat there with a cold drink, trying to play it cool like I wasn't getting stood up. Every guy in a hoodie that walked by made my heart race a little, and then drop when they passed. Eventually, I left. I sent one last message saying I hoped he was okay. The next morning, I checked again. Gone. Not just unmatched. His whole profile had vanished. No messages, no account. It was like he'd never existed on the app. I thought maybe he deleted it or something went wrong. Then I did the thing I should have done way earlier. I reversed image searched one of the selfies he sent. And that's when everything cracked. The photo popped up immediately. Not just in one place, in dozens. All tied to a real model with a totally different name. A verified account, alleged agency website, actual campaigns for brands I recognized. Not only was he real, he was kind of famous. Just not Darren. I kept looking. Every single photo I'd seen, from the cereal boxes to the hotel selfie, was taken from that guy's real life. His actual Instagram, photo shoots, and tag pictures. Cropped, edited, filtered slightly, but still the same. The person I'd been talking to had built an entire identity out of someone else's public image. It got worse. I found posts on a dating forum warning about the exact same thing. Different names, same photos, same story. Someone pretending to be this model, starting conversations, setting up dates, then disappearing before meeting. Over and over again. No scams for money, no stolen accounts. Just a weird, obsessive cycle of creating fake connections and vanishing. And the weirdest part, I never figured out why. There was no payoff, no con. Just conversations, photos, and then gone. Like the person behind it just wanted to live in someone else's spotlight for a few days at a time, then burn it all down and start over. I've thought about it a lot since then, about how I believed everything he said because he wasn't too perfect. His messages had typos. He didn't reply instantly. He got annoyed with flights and hated lead traffic. All these little fake flaws that made him seem real. Now, every time I see a profile with pro-level pictures, I question it. Doesn't matter how friendly they seem. I search everything. I reverse image search like a detective. And I trust way slower. The cafe where I waited that day, I've never gone back. Not because I'm bitter, but because I can still see myself sitting there like an idiot, hoping every stranger who walked in was him. It's not even about being rejected. It's about feeling like you connected with someone, only to realize they never existed. like you were texting a ghost that put on someone else's face for a while. So yeah, Darren was never real, not even close. Just some guy behind a screen, pretending to be someone he thought I'd fall for. And for a minute, I did. Not because he was beautiful, though he was, but because he knew exactly how to sound real enough to believe. The first message Layla ever sent said, "This van's too small for dating apps, but I'll make it work." It made me laugh. It also made her stand out. Her profile didn't look like everyone else's. It was all soft colors, cozy sweaters, random pictures of sunsets over the dashboard, or sitting on the roof of a van with a dog beside her. It looked peaceful in a way I didn't really see much anymore. There was no loudness in her profile, no mirror selfies, just this chill, drifting vibe that pulled you in without even trying. She said she was a graphic designer who worked remotely, just traveling around in her van, exploring when she could and working when she had to. She mentioned she didn't stay long in one place, but liked meeting people wherever she passed through. Her photos always looked like they belonged on a postcard. Mountain views, campfire dinners. She posted little stories in her captions too, like how raccoon once stole her granola or how she nearly ran out of gas in the middle of nowhere. I remember reading every single one of them. We started talking and everything about her seemed kind of easy. Not in a boring way, just calm. She wasn't constantly checking her phone, didn't message in a rush. Sometimes she'd take hours to reply and just say she was off-grid. It wasn't a big deal. It felt kind of nice, actually, like she was living something slower and I could maybe step into it a little. She said she was staying a little outside the city, parked at a campground by the lake for a few days while she caught up on work. We talked about maybe meeting up, grabbing a coffee, going for a walk by the water. Nothing too intense. She wasn't pushy and neither was I. We planned to meet in the afternoon near the edge of the park where her van was parked. She sent a pin drop and said she'd be outside with her dog. I showed up that day a bit early. It was quiet, peaceful, just like she described. A few other vans were parked there, some with solar panels, a couple of old school buses turned into homes. I walked around slowly, looking for the blue van she told me to look out for. It wasn't there. I waited by a picnic table near the water, checked my phone a few times, figured maybe she was just running late or had lost service. 30 minutes passed, then an hour. I texted her nothing. I walked around the loop again, just to make sure I hadn't missed her somehow. Still nothing. I waited another 20 minutes, trying not to feel ridiculous. Eventually I left. That night, I messaged again, just asking if everything was okay. No reply. The next morning I woke up, opened the app. Her profile was gone. Like totally wiped, not blocked, not unmatched, just gone. I tried to find her on Instagram. Nothing came up. I tried searching the photos she'd sent me, starting with the one of her holding her dog near a bonfire. It took 2 seconds to show up. Not just that photo, but the entire set. It belonged to a travel blogger couple who had been living in their van for 3 years. Same dog, same van, same exact captions in some cases. Layla wasn't in a single photo. She hadn't even changed the scenery. She just took the pictures, cropped out the guy from the couple, and filtered them slightly differently. Even the granola raccoon story was pulled straight from their blog, word for word. It hit me all at once how fake it all was. The van, the job, the dog. None of it was hers. She'd built this life by copying someone else's posts and pretending it was her own. The calm, peaceful person I thought I connected with didn't exist. She was a collage of someone else's memories. I searched more of her photos. One of her typing on a laptop while drinking coffee came from a stock website. Another, showing her feet hanging out the van doors with a view of a canyon, came from a popular travel Pinterest board. Every single image she'd ever posted was fake. There was no Layla, just some person pretending to live in a van, recycling other people's lives like they were stickers in a scrapbook. The weird part, she wasn't selling anything. There was no pitch, no link in bio, no OnlyFans, no GoFundMe, no book promo. Nothing. She wasn't after money or fame. She just wanted attention, or maybe just connection, without having to be real. That made it mess with me more. If she'd been scamming people for money, I could have been mad and moved on. But she wasn't. She just created this peaceful, pretty life, and invited people into it for a second, like some kind of digital Airbnb, then shut the door before anyone could see the truth. I still think about what might have happened if I actually met her. What kind of person shows up pretending to be someone like that? Would she have kept the lie going in person? Or would she have just coasted like she did? Now, whenever I see those van life posts, I hesitate. I used to scroll through them and feel jealous or inspired or even just relaxed. Now I look at them and wonder who's behind the screen. I wonder how many others are pretending. I still walk by the lake sometimes. There's this one tree near the edge with a bent trunk that kind of looks like a bench. That's where I sat while I waited for her. It's not dramatic or anything. Just a regular tree in a regular park. But I always glance at it when I pass. Not because I'm hoping she'll show up. I know she won't. She never existed. It's just weird knowing that for a few weeks, I believed in someone completely made up. Not a catfish in the traditional sense. She didn't lie about her face or her voice. She lied about her entire world. She offered peace and slowness and stillness, and I believed her because I wanted to. And maybe that's the worst kind of lie. Not the one that tricks your eyes, but the one that tricks your gut. It was one of those situations that felt safe because of how it started. My friend Megan sent me a screenshot one night of this guy she said I'd get along with. His name was Jared. She said he wasn't on social media much, but they'd gone to school together and reconnected recently at a friend's wedding. He was funny, sweet, not weird, and apparently into photography and hiking. I wasn't even looking to meet anyone at the time, but I trusted Megan, and honestly, I was bored. Jared and I started texting first. Megan gave him my number with my permission. He said hi, and right away I liked how normal he seemed. He didn't overdo anything. Didn't try to flirt aggressively or ask for photos. Just basic conversations about what we were watching, how our weeks were going, stuff like that. He had this dry humor that reminded me of someone from an old group chat I missed. It was easy. We talked for a few weeks, not every day, but often enough that it started to feel like a routine. He'd tell me about shoots he was planning and showed me a few photos, mostly black and white city stuff, rainy street corners, and neon lights. He said he had some work featured in smaller publications and that he freelanced while doing part-time work at a bookstore. It all felt believable. Chill, creative, a little introverted. He seemed grounded, which I liked. We started talking more regularly, and eventually he brought up the idea of meeting in person. He said he'd be in my area the next weekend to visit a cousin, and maybe we could grab coffee. We kept it casual. I said sure. We planned to meet downtown near this cafe I liked that had a little patio with string lights. He said he knew the place. That weekend came, and I got ready, feeling nervous but in a good way. I texted him when I got there. He didn't respond right away, but I figured maybe he was parking or something. I ordered a drink and sat outside, checking my phone every couple of minutes. 20 minutes passed. I texted again, just saying I was there and asking if he was close. Nothing. I waited almost an hour before I left. No messages, no calls. I felt dumb, sitting there watching couples walk by and trying not to look like I'd been stood up. That night I checked again. Still no reply. I messaged Megan, just casually asking when the last time she talked to Jared was. She said not for a while and asked how the date went. I told her he didn't show and she seemed genuinely confused. The next day I decided to look him up. Not just on Instagram or Facebook. I mean really look. I went through the photos he'd sent, reverse searched a couple of them, and sure enough, one of the pictures popped up on a photographer's website, not Jared's. A guy named Marcus who lived in another state and had a full online portfolio. All the photos Jared had sent were Marcus, not just a few. All of them. Even the one he said was taken outside the bookstore he worked at. It wasn't even in the same city. I messaged Megan again, this time more directly. I asked how well she actually knew him. She told me she didn't, not really. They hadn't gone to school together. She met him once at a mutual friend's party, and he added her online after that. They'd barely talked. She never even confirmed his last name. She just assumed he was legit because he seemed normal enough. She felt bad, but it wasn't really her fault. I'd gone along with it too. I kept digging and found out he used the same photos on multiple dating platforms under different names. Jared was just one of them. On another app, he was Thomas. Same photos, same vibe, different name, different city. I found threads online with people asking about him. A few others had been talking to him, sometimes for months. The stories were almost identical. Cool creative guy, low drama, talks about coffee and art, then disappears when they try to meet, always just before the first in-person meetup. And that's the thing. He never asked for anything. Not money, not gifts, not even weird photos. He didn't try to scam me in the obvious way. He just wanted to talk, get close, and vanish. It felt almost like he was building up to something, and then pulling away the second reality got involved. Like the idea of being Jared was more important than actually being Jared. The part that messed with me most was how real the connection felt. I didn't think I'd been in love or anything, but I had started imagining what it would be like to hang out with him in person. I liked the version of him he showed me. Funny, thoughtful, kind of awkward, but in a cute way. I started picturing him sitting across from me at that cafe, camera slung over his shoulder, making some dry joke about how trendy everything looked. I didn't think I was being gullible. I just thought I was talking to a guy who liked the same stuff I did. After it all came out, I deleted his number, deleted the messages, blocked the fake profiles I found. But it didn't make it feel finished. It was like trying to block a ghost. I don't even know who the real person behind it was. Maybe he was lonely. Maybe he did it just to feel something for a while. Maybe it was all some weird game. I'll never know. Now when someone says, I'm a friend of a friend, I double check. I ask more questions. I don't assume that being 1 degree removed from someone makes them safe. And if someone seems too normal online, like perfectly unremarkable in all the right ways, I take a step back and think twice. I haven't gone back to that cafe either. Not because I'm bitter. It's just that I sat there for an hour believing someone was going to walk through the door, and they never did. And that feeling stuck with me more than I expected. In the end, Jared wasn't real, but the version of him I got to know felt real. And that's the part I still don't really know what to do with. It all started with a book club. At first, it was just a way to kill time. A friend of mine, Kate, mentioned a local book club she had been going to, and since I loved reading and was looking for something new, I decided to join. The idea of meeting new people sounded like a good change of pace, so I showed up to the meeting one Tuesday night. Ava was there from the beginning. She was charming in a way that made everyone comfortable right away. She had a way of speaking that made you feel like you were the only person in the room, even when she was talking to a group. She was funny, smart, and had the kind of energy that made everyone around her want to keep talking. In the beginning, I just thought she was another enthusiastic member of the club, but over the course of a few meetings, she started to stand out to me more than the others. She had these deep insights into the books we read, and the way she talked about things made me feel like I was actually learning something. We started talking outside of the group. She would send me messages on the group chat after meetings, asking for my thoughts on the books we discussed. We'd chat casually, and she would send me random book recommendations or articles she'd read. It felt nice to have someone to connect with like that. I looked forward to our messages, and soon it became a habit. Ava was easy to talk to, and I started sharing more personal stuff with her. She seemed genuinely interested in my life, my opinions, and everything in between. Then one day, out of nowhere, Ava suggested we meet up for coffee. I thought it was a bit unusual since we'd mostly just talked online, but I figured it would be nice to finally hang out in person. We set a time for the weekend, and I was excited. I got to the coffee shop early, sat at a table near the window, and waited. A little part of me was nervous because I hadn't actually met her face to face yet, but I figured it would be just like any other normal meeting. After all, we had talked so much online. She was a friend by then, right? I waited for almost an hour before I realized something wasn't right. My phone buzzed, and it was a message from Ava. She said she was running late and asked if I could wait just a little longer. No big deal, I thought. So I stayed. Another hour passed, and she texted again, apologizing for taking so long and explaining she had gotten caught up in something. By then, I was starting to feel uneasy. Something about the whole situation was starting to feel off. but I didn't want to be rude or jump to conclusions. I stayed another half hour just watching the door and waiting. At that point, I didn't even know what to think. It was getting late, and I had work the next day. I decided to leave, feeling frustrated and confused. Ava had said she was coming, but she never did. When I texted her to ask if everything was okay, she apologized again, saying she'd gotten stuck in traffic and would explain everything later. I went home feeling annoyed but still unsure of what had happened. I gave her the benefit of the doubt, figuring maybe she'd had a bad day or something had gone wrong. But the next few days were quiet. Ava didn't reach out like she normally did, and I started to wonder if I had done something wrong. Was I too forward? Did I say something that put her off? I sent a few messages, but they went unanswered. A week later, she finally texted me again, apologizing for the delay and explaining that she'd had some personal things to take care of. She seemed distant, and I didn't like the tone of her messages. It wasn't like how we used to talk. I tried not to overthink it, but I couldn't help but feel like something was off. After a few more weeks of awkward texting, I found out that Ava had suddenly stopped coming to the book club meetings. No one had heard from her. I thought it was strange, but I didn't think too much of it. People come and go, right? Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. One day, while I was scrolling through social media, I stumbled upon a post about Ava. It was from a mutual friend, someone who had also been part of the book club. The post said that Ava had been using fake photos of someone else to create her online identity. Apparently, she wasn't even who she said she was. It turned out that the person I had been talking to for months wasn't real. I couldn't believe it. Ava wasn't even her real name. All the stories she told me, the recommendations, everything she'd shared, had been based on lies. I found out that Ava had taken the identity of a woman she had once met online, someone she admired and decided to pretend to be. The whole thing had been a game to her. She created an elaborate persona, pretending to be this smart, well-read, easygoing person who just wanted to connect with others. But all of it was a lie. I went back to the messages we had shared, the conversations we'd had, and I realized how manipulative it all was. Ava had slowly pulled me in, built up this false connection, and then just disappeared when it suited her. She used her fake identity as a way to experience other people's lives without actually living one herself. I felt like a fool for not seeing it earlier, but at the same time, I didn't know how to feel. I had shared personal stories with this person, trusted her with my thoughts, and now I felt completely betrayed. The worst part was how easy it was for her to slip through the cracks. She hadn't done anything majorly wrong in the eyes of most people. No one could prove she was scamming anyone or causing real harm. But in the end, it felt like I had been tricked into caring about someone who didn't even exist. I never went back to the book club after that. Not because I was mad at anyone else, but because I realized how easy it is to get pulled into someone else's fantasy. Ava wasn't the first person to hide behind a fake identity online, and I'm sure she won't be the last. But I didn't want to put myself in that situation again. It was the strangest feeling knowing someone who wasn't real. It didn't feel like I was just mourning the loss of a friendship. It felt like mourning the loss of someone who had never existed at all. It started with the usual exchange. Max slid into my DMs, not out of the blue, but just after we both liked a few of each other's posts on Instagram. He had that I'm new in town vibe. A little mysterious, a little reserved, and I liked that. I wasn't looking for anything serious, just a chill conversation. Maybe someone to hang out with now that I was back home after a few months of traveling. Max seemed perfect for that. He told me he'd moved to the city for a new job and was staying with a friend until he found a permanent place. We started chatting about the usual stuff. What brought him to town. What kind of music he liked, where he used to live. He seemed like one of those people who didn't mind taking the time to get to know you. He was really open and a bit funny, and that kept me interested. A little banter goes a long way, you know. It was the kind of casual online connection that grew steadily over the next couple of weeks. I was starting to look forward to our chats at the end of the day. Max would share random updates. He was looking for apartments, trying new cafes, getting used to the public transport system, that sort of thing. He'd mention a few details about his life, Little things that seemed normal and harmless. He told me he was a graphic designer, and he sent me a few examples of his work. Cool designs, really well done stuff. It was the kind of thing that made me think, yeah, this guy's got his act together. As we talked more, he started to mention his living situation more often. He'd say things like, my friend's couch is getting old, or I'm tired of crashing at their place, but nothing's available yet. It all seemed fine. I didn't think much of it. Lots of people stay with friends when they move to a new place, especially if they're still figuring out where they want to live. But it felt like Max was starting to drift into a more urgent tone whenever he talked about his living situation. One day, he mentioned a place that might be opening up soon, but he didn't have the address yet. I thought it was just him being vague about the details, maybe just a way to keep some privacy, but I didn't press him. One evening, after a few weeks of getting to know each other, I mentioned that I was free on Saturday and asked if he wanted to grab coffee or just hang out. I figured we'd been talking enough to make it feel natural. He said he'd love to, but had a work thing to do in the afternoon. But he still suggested we meet up later that evening after his thing was over. Let's meet at 8, he said. There's a place I know near where I'm staying. I was all in. So 8 o'clock came around, and I put on my shoes, ready for the night. I didn't think too much about it. I was excited, but nothing screamed weird at this point. I arrived early, stood outside the place he mentioned, and waited. It was a nice cafe, the kind that had those little vintage-looking signs and fairy lights that make you feel like you're in a scene from a movie. The clock hit 8, and there was no sign of him. I checked my phone, and there was no message. I waited another 15 minutes before sending him a text. Hey, where are you? No reply. I didn't freak out right away. Maybe he was running late. But as the minutes ticked by, I started to feel a little more uneasy. I kept telling myself that people get stuck in traffic or have things come up. I sat down at one of the outdoor tables, watching the street, wondering what was going on. By 8:45, I was getting frustrated. Still no word from him. I decided to call him. The phone rang once, twice, then went to voicemail. Okay, this is weird, I thought. Maybe he just caught up with something. But the thing that bugged me the most was that he had always been so responsive in our messages. He had been quick to reply before, so the fact that he wasn't answering felt off. I stayed there for another half hour, and by 9:30 I was getting anxious. I didn't want to give up just yet, though, so I decided to give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he had a legit emergency, but my patience was wearing thin. As I was about to leave, I noticed something strange. The street that I was sitting on wasn't the main one that Max had mentioned he was staying near. It wasn't a huge deal, but the fact that he had said one thing and then directed me somewhere else felt like it was adding up to a series of small, suspicious clues. I started wondering if I had been lied to. Maybe Max wasn't actually living anywhere near this place. Maybe he wasn't staying with a friend at all. I checked the address he had given me again. It was a rundown area, but I still couldn't make sense of it. None of the buildings in sight seemed like they could have been places where Max had described. Everything was starting to feel wrong, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I had been missiled in some way. As I walked down the street to get to my car, I passed an alleyway where a guy suddenly called out, "Are you the one waiting for Max?" I stopped it in my tracks. This random guy had no reason to know who I was waiting for. He looked at me curiously. "Yeah," I said. "I'm waiting for him, actually. Do you know him?" He shrugged, looking me up and down. "I don't know anyone named Max, but figure for him you should know if he's not around anymore." The comment caught me off guard. "What do you mean? Is he sick or something?" I asked, feeling a tinge of hope that maybe there was some explanation I hadn't considered. The guy just shook his head. "Nah, he's not around. Been gone for a while." I stood there for a few moments, processing what he said. Something clicked, and I felt like I had just stumbled on a strange puzzle piece. I asked the guy if he knew where Max had gone. His response was quick. "He's not from around here. Never was." I didn't stick around for more. I just left, all the while trying to figure out what had just happened. That night, after some quick searching, I realized I'd been talking to a stranger who had never been in the city, let alone anywhere near the place Max had claimed he was staying. The photos? Stolen. The stories? Fabricated. Max wasn't Max, he was just another catfish posing as someone he wasn't. It didn't take long for me to connect the dots. The whole time I had been chatting with someone who wasn't real, and the guy at the alley had known more than I did. When I finally got home, I blocked him on all my accounts. I didn't need closure, I didn't need an apology, and I sure as hell didn't need any more fake stories. Just a straight-up warning to trust my gut the next time. I had been talking to Tessa for months. I knew we had a connection. We talked about everything from our favorite movies to our worst fears, and there was something about her that just clicked with me. She was the kind of person who could talk about deep stuff without it feeling heavy. She made me laugh, and we spent hours swapping stories. Our friendship grew fast, and before long we were sharing more than just surface level details. She told me about her life at college and how she was studying to become a therapist. We even talked about the pressure of school and how it was hard for her to find time for herself. She seemed so real, so authentic. It was almost like we were living parallel lives. She'd send me photos of herself hanging out with friends, always in those typical college settings: coffee shops, library corners, walking across campus in the middle of the day with a backpack slung over one shoulder. She made it sound like she was constantly surrounded by people, and she said she loved it. There was something about her that made everything sound effortless. But there was one thing that stood out. She always had this excuse about how she couldn't send video calls. She said it was because of her crazy schedule or that her dorm room was too loud. And sometimes she'd claim the connection was just bad. I didn't think too much of it at first. I understood. College life could be a whirlwind. I was no stranger to being too busy to set up a camera for a call. But as the weeks went by, her explanations started to feel less believable. It wasn't like I was sitting around obsessing about it. I had my own stuff to deal with. Still, it began to nag at me. One day, after we'd been talking for almost 4 months, Tessa dropped the bombshell. She told me she had a stalker. I couldn't believe it at first. The kind of stuff she was describing sounded straight out of a crime show. Creepy notes, someone following her to class, messages on social media that she didn't recognize. I wanted to be supportive, but it also felt like a lot to take in. She told me she didn't want to go to the authorities because she was afraid it would make things worse. She said she had already told her roommates, but she was scared to be more open about it, so I respected that. She said she couldn't share any details about her college because she didn't want to make it easy for this person to find her. It made sense, in a way. Stalkers aren't something you can easily talk about, especially when you're still trying to figure out what's going on yourself. I offered to help her in any way I could, but she reassured me she had it under control. She thanked me for being understanding and said she didn't want to drag me into it too much. But from that point on, there was this distance that grew between us. It was subtle at first, just small things. She became less responsive, taking longer to reply, and when she did reply, it was more surface level stuff. But I kept convincing myself it was all just the stress of school and the stalker situation. After all, she had a lot on her plate. Then one day she texted me and said she'd be in town for a few days and suggested we meet up. She said she'd come to my side of the city and we could finally hang out in person. I was excited, but also a little nervous. This felt like a big step. She gave me a time and a place, a park near my apartment. She told me to keep an eye out for her, and I should meet her by the fountain. It felt like everything was lining up perfectly. I got to the park early, full of anticipation. I had the kind of nervous excitement that comes with meeting someone you've been talking to for so long. I looked around for her, trying to spot her among the crowd. My phone buzzed. It was a message from Tessa. "I'm here, but I think I'm running a little late." I shrugged it off. It was fine. I figured she might have gotten held up or something. I sent her a quick message back, telling her I was by the fountain. I figured she'd be there soon enough. Minutes passed, then an hour. Still no sign of her. By this time, I was starting to feel a little uneasy. I tried texting again, but no response. I even called once, but it went straight to voicemail. My mind started racing. What was going on? Why wasn't she showing up? I'd been excited to meet her, but now I was feeling this creeping anxiety. It didn't make sense. She'd never been flaky like this before. I hung around for a while, hoping she might show up, but eventually I realized she wasn't coming. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but something felt off. I decided to leave and check my messages again. I got home and sent her another message saying, "Hey, where are you?" I waited for over an hour. Still no response. Nothing. The next morning, I woke up to a message from Tessa, but it wasn't what I expected. "I'm so sorry," she wrote. "I had to leave town suddenly. I know I said I'd meet you, but things came up and I didn't want to worry you." I stared at the message for a long time. Something didn't feel right. If she'd had to leave town, why hadn't she said anything before? Why didn't she let me know? And why, if she was so close to meeting, had I not gotten a single update from her the entire time I waited? I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I started searching online, trying to find more information about the college she mentioned. I couldn't find any traces of her. There was no record of her name associated with any colleges nearby. When I looked at the school she claimed to attend, there was no mention of a student named Tessa. No social media, no academic records, nothing. I kept digging. I found a picture that she had once sent me, one from her supposed campus. After a quick reverse image search, I found the exact same picture, but on a completely different website. It was a stock photo of a college campus, not some private shot she had taken herself. It all clicked. The stalker story, the lack of video calls, the constant vague excuses. And now this, she wasn't who she said she was. Tessa was a catfish. The person I've been talking to for all those months wasn't even real. That realization hit me harder than I thought it would. I felt embarrassed and betrayed, but mostly I felt stupid for not seeing the signs earlier. I blocked her on everything, but I still couldn't help feeling a bit hollow. It was like all of that time spent talking to a ghost had meant nothing. In the end, it wasn't about learning a lesson. It was just the painful truth that some people create whole lives online, and sometimes you're part of their illusion. It had been a few weeks since I started talking to Dylan. I still remember the first time he messaged me. His profile seemed completely normal, just a guy talking about his recovery journey. We bonded quickly over shared experiences with mental health, which felt comforting. We traded stories about how tough things had been and how we were trying to get better. He told me he was in a recovery program and was doing a lot of work on himself. It made sense. He had this kind of sincerity about him, even through text. There was something in his words that made him sound genuine, like he was being totally open with me. But what really stuck with me was how much he wanted someone to talk to. Dylan told me how he often felt isolated, like people around him just didn't get it. That really hit home for me. So we ended up chatting every day. Long texts, emotional voice notes, sharing struggles. It felt real. He'd always tell me he wanted to meet up, but that he was still going through a lot, so it wasn't the right time. I understood. He said he was still in the program, focusing on himself. The messages he sent were always reassuring, encouraging, and full of support. It almost felt like he was reading my mind, answering my thoughts before I even had the chance to ask the questions. He shared some really personal stuff about his past, how he'd fallen into addiction, and how he was slowly working through it in this intense rehab center. Dylan said he didn't want to make people feel uncomfortable by opening up too much, but he felt like I was someone who truly understood him. Eventually, Dylan told me he was coming to my city. He said he had been cleared by his program for a short visit and that he was really looking forward to meeting. He gave me some details about where he'd be staying. It sounded great. We agreed to meet up and spend some time together when he arrived. I felt excited and a bit nervous, but mostly I was eager to finally meet this person who had become such an important part of my daily life. The day he was supposed to arrive, I waited. I checked my phone every few minutes. He told me he'd be at a specific coffee shop near where I lived, so I figured it would be an easy meeting. I showed up early to make sure I didn't miss him. The shop was bustling, but I had no problem finding a seat by the window, scanning the door every time it opened. I figured it was only a matter of time before Dylan would walk through it. An hour passed, no Dylan. I thought maybe he was running late, or maybe he got caught in traffic. I kept telling myself there was a reasonable explanation. Another hour went by. Nothing. I checked my phone. No messages. It felt like something was off, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I gave it another hour. By the time the third hour rolled around, I was starting to get really frustrated. I messaged him, asking if everything was okay, if he was still coming. Still nothing. At this point, I couldn't help but wonder if something was wrong. Maybe he had been in an accident. Maybe something had happened back at the rehab center that delayed him. It was late in the afternoon now, and the coffee shop was quieter. I walked out to the street, feeling a little more than confused. I couldn't shake this nagging feeling in my stomach. I had been waiting for hours, and I was beginning to realize that something just wasn't adding up. Why wasn't he here? I decided to call the rehab center he had mentioned. I didn't want to seem intrusive, but at this point, I had to find out if he had even been there. I asked the receptionist if there was anyone named Dylan in the program, and she told me there was no one by that name currently enrolled. It was an odd moment. My mind immediately started to race. Maybe he was lying about being in a program. Maybe he was hiding something. It just didn't make sense. I hung up and tried to call him again. No answer. I texted him a few more times. Still, no response. I felt a strange mixture of confusion, concern, and anger. Who was I talking to? Was this even the person I thought it was? Eventually, I decided to go back home. The whole situation left me feeling unsettled, like I had been led down a path by someone who was pretending to be something they weren't. I started going through the messages Dylan had sent me over the past few weeks. They seemed genuine enough. He'd shared personal details, always asking me how my day was going and giving me advice based on what I had been dealing with. But now, looking at the messages again, they seemed distant, like they were written by someone else, someone who wasn't Dylan. I took a deep breath and decided to dig deeper. I did a quick search for his name online. Nothing. It wasn't the first time I'd done this, but now I felt like I had to know for sure. I found some old social media accounts that seemed like they might have been his, but all of them were dead ends. No posts, no real photos, just vague details and the occasional comment here and there. Then it hit me. I had seen the same photos Dylan sent me on a different profile. A quick reversed image search led me to someone else's profile. It wasn't a real person. It was just some stock photos mixed with fake details. The person I've been talking to wasn't Dylan. The real Dylan wasn't in a rehab center. He wasn't in my city. He was a complete stranger using someone else's pictures and a fake story to lure me in. I felt disgusted, betrayed. It wasn't just the fact that I had been lied to. It was the realization that I had fallen for someone's elaborate web of deception. It had been months of daily conversations, late-night talks, and all of it was just a game for whoever was behind that fake account. The feeling of it was almost worse than the lie itself. I blocked the number, deleted all the messages, and decided to let go of whatever connection I thought I had with him. I wasn't mad at myself for believing him. I was just upset that I'd let myself get so involved in someone who wasn't real. It was a harsh lesson, but it was one I needed to learn. People can be whoever they want online. They can create whole identities, and sometimes you don't see the lies until you're too deep into it. In the end, I realized that Dylan, the guy I had spent all that time thinking about, was never real to begin with.